Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. My name is Rashad King. I am 32 years old, and the day my life flipped inside out started with a phone call at 10 o'clock on a Thursday morning. My office phone lit up with the extension from upstairs, the one nobody ever wanted to see. The director of operations wanted to see me in the conference room. My stomach tightened. People did not get called into that room for good news. I saved the spreadsheet I was working on, straightened my tie out of habit, and walked down the hallway that suddenly felt too long and too quiet. When I opened the conference room door and saw the director sitting at one end of the table and a woman from Human Resources at the other, folder in front of her, I knew exactly what was about to happen. "Rashad, thanks for coming up," the director said, voice heavy in that painfully polite way people use when they are about to cut you open. I sat down, hands folded so they would not fidget. The woman from Human Resources gave me a practiced, sympathetic look and slid the folder toward me. "We are restructuring," the director continued. "Your position is being eliminated. Today will be your last day." 8 years with the company, late nights, weekends, putting out fires that were not mine to put out, it all condensed into that one sentence. For a second, the room softened around the edges. The hum of the air conditioner suddenly loud in my ears. I nodded once. "All right," I said, because what else was there? The thing was, I had seen this coming. Not the exact day and time, but the pattern. Contracts had been drying up. Budgets kept getting cut. My direct supervisor had moved on to another opportunity 2 months earlier, and his replacement still had not appeared. We had gone through 3 rounds of cost optimization in 1 year. When they start using phrases like that, it is just a matter of time. I had been quietly updating my resume, reconnecting with people on LinkedIn, grabbing coffee with former colleagues. By the time I walked into that conference room, I already had a verbal offer from a competitor for a senior role with a better title and about 35% more money, plus significantly better benefits. I was just waiting on the official offer letter before I gave notice. The timing of the layoff just meant I did not have to. The woman from Human Resources began explaining the severance package, sliding pages toward me and pointing to highlighted sections. Company policy was 2 weeks of pay for every year of service, which would have been 16 weeks for me. But because they were eliminating several senior positions at once and wanted to avoid potential legal messes, they had bumped it up. 16 weeks of pay, plus a lump sum for all my unused paid time off, plus a little extra for transition support, as they called it. After taxes, it came out to just over $200,000. On top of that, the company agreed to continue my health insurance coverage for 6 months. I sat there listening, nodding, occasionally asking a dry logistical question, while a part of me stood back in disbelief. They were paying me $200,000 to walk out the door and never come back. 30 minutes later, I was packing a cardboard box with the usual office debris, framed photo from a beach trip, coffee mug with a chipped handle, a couple of plants, a stack of notebooks filled with half-finished sketches of processes I would never need again. A few coworkers drifted by, offering awkward hugs, and, "Let us keep in touch," promises that we all knew would fade. By noon, I was in the parking garage, the echo of my footsteps bouncing off the concrete as I carried that box toward my car. I put it in the back seat, sat behind the wheel, and just stared at the steering wheel for a minute. 8 years, over just like that. For the first time all morning, the reality pressed in. I exhaled slowly and pulled out my phone. My girlfriend, Tiffany Brooks, was at the top of my messages. We had been together for 18 months, long enough to have met each other's families, to talk about moving in together, to browse listings online and imagine what kind of house we wanted one day. I called her. The line rang twice. "Hey," she answered. "I'm at lunch with my sister." "What is up?" I swallowed. "Are you free to talk for a minute?" I asked. "I kind of need you right now." She sighed. I could hear clinking silverware and chatter in the background. "Just say it, Rashad. I have like 5 minutes before the food comes." I stared at the dash. "I got laid off this morning," I said. There was silence on the other end. "Tiffany," I prompted. "Are you serious right now?" She finally said, her voice sharp. "Yeah," I replied. "They are restructuring. They eliminated my position. It has been a rough morning, but I will explain everything when I cannot do this," she interrupted. The tone in her voice shifted from surprise to cold so fast it made my skin prickle. "Cannot do what?" I asked. I cannot be with someone who does not have his life together, Tiffany said. I need stability. I need a partner who can provide, Rashad. I actually laughed once, disbelieving. It is a layoff, I said. This happens. I have savings. I have a plan. I already have a verbal offer line. Stop. Just stop, she said sharply. I've been thinking about this anyway. You're not where I need you to be. I want a house, children, security. Not someone starting over at 32. The phrase, starting over, hit me harder than the layoff. I'm not starting over, I said slowly. Tiffany, I am breaking up with you, she said flat. My hand tightened around the phone. Right now? I asked. You are breaking up with me right now, in the middle of this. I need someone established, someone successful. Not. She paused, and I could hear the next word forming before it left her mouth. Not an unemployed loser. Time stretched for a second. I stared out at the rows of cars, the dull gray of the concrete, my reflection in the windshield across from me. Wow, I said. That was all I could manage. It is nothing personal, Tiffany continued, and that part almost made me laugh again. I just cannot waste more time on someone who might not work out. Good luck with everything. She hung up. I sat there in the parking garage, phone still pressed to my ear, even though the call had ended. It was a little funny, in a dark way. The worst professional day of my life, and the end of an 18-month relationship, all wrapped into the same 2-hour window. I did not cry. I was not even furious. Mostly, I felt this sharp, clean disappointment, like a bone that had snapped in exactly the way the doctor predicted. All at once, I saw her differently. All those conversations about future plans, all the questions she had asked me about bonuses and promotions, the way she lit up when I mentioned a raise, pieces fit together that I had chosen not to examine too closely before. Unemployed loser. I repeated softly to myself, just to hear how it sounded. It landed differently than any insult I had heard before, not because it was true, but because she had apparently been carrying it around, waiting for an opportunity to use it. I drove home with the radio off, just the noise of the traffic and my thoughts. By the time I pulled into my apartment complex in Houston, the edges of the day had started to blur. I carried the box upstairs, dropped it by the couch, and stood in the middle of my living room for a moment, hands on my hips. Then I went to the kitchen, grabbed a beer from the refrigerator, and sat at the table with my laptop. If the company was going to pay me 6 figures to leave, the least I could do was make that money work for me. I opened my email, mostly expecting automatic messages from Human Resources and the Benefits Department. Instead, my eyes landed on a subject line from the competitor I had interviewed with, formal offer, senior director position. The timestamp on the email showed it had come in while I had been in the parking garage getting dumped. I clicked it open. The offer was even better than the verbal one they had given me. The base salary was 40% higher than what I had been making. The bonus structure was more generous. The health insurance premiums were lower. They were offering a relocation stipend if I ever wanted to move closer to the office, though the role was hybrid. The start date was 6 weeks out. I scrolled down slowly, rereading certain lines, feeling something warm and steady push back against the cold emptiness Tiffany's words had left. I took another sip of beer and, without giving myself time to overthink it, I grabbed my phone and called my friend Leon. Leon and I had gone to college together. He worked in finance now, the kind of guy who actually enjoyed reading about tax codes. He picked up on the second ring. "What is up, man?" he asked. "You sound like you either just won the lottery or got hit by a truck." "A little of both," I said. "Got laid off this morning." "Damn," he said immediately. "You good?" "Here's the twist," I replied. They gave me a severance package worth just over $200,000 after taxes, plus 6 months of continued health insurance coverage. And I just got the official offer for that senior director position we talked about. It starts in 6 weeks with a 40% raise. There was a brief silence. Then Leon gave a low whistle. "That is not a truck," he said. "That is the lottery with a minor fender bender." I laughed for real for the first time that day. "I want to make sure I do not waste this money," I said. "I could use your brain." We spent the next 2 hours on the phone. I read him the details of the severance and the new job offer. Leon asked about my savings, my debts, my monthly expenses. "All right," he finally said. "Here's what I would do in your situation. Take about $80,000 of that severance and clean your slate and set up your safety net. Pay off your car, pay off all your credit cards, and then divide the rest between a high-yield savings account and a solid, diversified investment account. That leaves you around $120,000 as your cushion for the next 6 weeks, and as an emergency fund going forward. You will start the new job without any consumer debt and with real breathing room. I wrote it all down, feeling a sense of control return piece by piece. The next morning, I woke up at my usual time, reflexively reached for my phone to check work messages, and then remembered there would not be any. Instead of putting on business casual clothes, I pulled on a t-shirt and jeans and drove to the bank. By the end of the day, my car was paid off. The $14,000 I still owed was gone. $8,000 in credit card balances disappeared. I opened a high-yield savings account and moved a chunk of the severance there. Leon helped me set up an investment account over video chat, walking me through mutual funds and index funds until the words stopped sounding like another language. When I logged into my banking app that evening, my checking account looked different, smaller in some ways because the debts were gone, but sturdier. I had never seen my finances that clean. Week 1 of unemployment felt surreal. I had been working since I was 16, and suddenly, there was nowhere I had to be. The first 2 days, I kept expecting someone from my old office to call and say there had been a mistake. By the 3rd day, the reality sank in. I slept in. I went to the gym in the middle of the day instead of before dawn or after work when I was already exhausted. I cooked actual breakfast instead of grabbing a granola bar while rushing out the door. I caught up on books that had been sitting half-read on my nightstand for months. It was only when the constant low-grade tension in my shoulders started to fade that I realized how burnt out I'd been. On the 4th day, my phone buzzed with a message from Kiana, one of Tiffany's closest friends who had also become my friend over time. "Hey," she wrote. "I heard what happened with work. That was really harsh. Just wanted to check on you." I told her I was doing all right, that I had another job lined up, that I was using the time off to reset. After a pause, she replied, "Good. Also, I thought you should know Tiffany is telling people you are broke and jobless, and that she had to leave because she could not support you. Most people are not buying it. We know you." I stared at the screen, my jaw tightening. "Appreciate the heads up," I wrote back. "I'm not going to correct her story. I'm just going to live my life." Week 3, I got a message from her cousin Ryan. We had all gone to cookouts and game nights together enough times that he had my number. "Dude," he wrote, "you get a raw deal. I heard the way she talked to you. My cousin can be intense about money stuff. Her dad walked out when she was a kid and left them with nothing. Finances are a trigger for her. Not saying it is right. Just context." I stared at his words for a while. Context did not change the fact that she had called me an unemployed loser and ended our relationship in the middle of one of the hardest mornings of my life. I typed back, "I am sorry she went through that, but I'm not her father. I did not deserve to be treated like that." He replied, "You are right. Just wanted to say I see you. Take care, man." The 6 weeks between the layoff and the start of the new job became a strange, unexpectedly peaceful chapter. I went to a couple more interviews, just to see what the market would offer me now that I had nothing to lose. Both companies that brought me and made offers that were higher than even the one I had already accepted, which did more for my confidence than I like to admit. I took a week and drove to New Orleans and back, stopping in small towns, eating at little diners, walking along the riverfront with no schedule. I let my mind wander without immediately pulling it back to project timelines and quarterly targets. Sometimes, while sitting on a balcony with coffee in my hand, I would remember Tiffany's voice saying, "Unemployed loser," and it would feel distant, like a line from a movie I had watched long ago. On the 5th week, I decided to buy a new car. My previous car was fine, but I had always wanted a Tesla Model 3, and now I could afford one without wrecking my finances. I did my research, ran the numbers 3 times, and found a certified pre-owned Model 3 at a dealership just outside Houston for $52,000. I paid for it outright. The new job's office had free charging stations in the parking garage, so even the practical side of my brain was satisfied. The day I went to pick it up, I spent an extra 20 minutes just sitting in the driver's seat in the lot, running my hands over the steering wheel, trying out the touchscreen controls, feeling a quiet pride that had nothing to do with impressing anyone else. After leaving the dealership, I drove around the city just to enjoy the feeling. The car was whisper quiet, gliding through traffic. The sky was bright, the air clear, and for the first time in a long time, my life felt open instead of tight. On the way back toward my apartment, I decided to stop at a coffee shop near my old place, a spot Tiffany and I had used as a halfway point when we first started dating. The parking lot was half full. I pulled in, parked near the front, and stepped out of the Tesla, stretching. I had barely closed the door when I heard a familiar voice say my name. Tiffany was sitting at an outdoor table with her sister Michelle. She must have seen the car first, because her eyes were fixed on it, brow furrowed like she was trying to do math in her head. When I straightened up and turned toward the entrance, our eyes met. Her jaw literally dropped. Michelle glanced between us, eyebrows lifting. I nodded once in Tiffany's direction in a polite, distant way and walked past them into the shop. While I waited in line, I could feel her gaze burning into the back of my neck. I ordered a coffee, chatted briefly with the barista, and when my drink was ready, I stepped back outside. "Nice car," Tiffany said, forcing a smile that did not reach her eyes. She leaned back in her chair like she was casually commenting, but her voice had a strain in it. "Thanks," I said, and kept walking. "Wait, can we talk for a second?" she called. I stopped, turned slightly. "Make it quick," I said. Michelle looked uncomfortable, like she wished she was anywhere else. Tiffany stood up, smoothing her blouse. "Wow," she said, eyes flicking from the car to me. "A Tesla. That is amazing. How did you manage that so fast?" "The severance package was good," I replied. "I used it smart." "That is great," she said quickly. "I'm really happy for you." The smile she put on looked like it might crack her face. "So, what are you doing now?" "Still looking?" she asked, her tone carefully neutral. "I start my new job on Monday," I said. "Senior director role. It is better than the old place." Her expression shifted in a way I could not quite name. Shock, regret, and a flicker of panic. "That is incredible," she said, voice a little faint. There was a pause. She took a breath. "Look, I know we left things badly," Tiffany said. "You dumped me and called me an unemployed loser." I reminded her, my tone calm. Michelle coughed quietly, looking down at her phone. Tiffany's cheeks flushed. "I was emotional," she said. "I did not mean—" "Yes, you did," I said. "But it's fine. It worked out for both of us." She looked at me intently. "I've been thinking about you," she said quickly. "About us. I made a mistake. I was scared, and I overreacted." She stepped closer and touched my arm. "I believe in second chances," she said softly. "Everyone deserves a second chance. Maybe we could get coffee this week. Talk properly. Start over." I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back up at her face. I remembered the way her voice had sounded that day in the parking garage, cool and decisive as she cut me loose. The contrast was almost dizzying. "No," I said. Her lips parted. "What?" "No," I repeated. "I do not date people who think love comes with conditions. You showed me who you are when things got hard. I believe in second chances for people who deserve them. You do not." Her face went red. "Are you serious?" she asked. "After everything we had?" "Everything we had lasted until I lost my job," I said. "That is not everything. That is barely anything." "I made one mistake," Tiffany protested. "You made a choice," I said. "A calculated one. You even told me you had been thinking about it. You decided losing my job made me disposable. So, no, I didn't want to get coffee. I didn't want to talk. I want you to live with the consequences of choosing a paycheck over a person." For a moment, there was only the clink of cups on the cafe tables and a low murmur of other conversations around us. Michelle stared even harder at her phone, clearly wishing she could disappear. "You are being cruel," Tiffany said finally. "No," I said. "I'm being clear. We are done. Enjoy your coffee." I walked to my car, got in, and pulled away. In the rearview mirror, I saw her still standing there, watching the car disappear. I felt oddly light. 2 weeks after the coffee shop encounter, I had settled into my new job. The office was in a sleek glass building downtown, the kind of place where the lobby smelled like expensive cleaning products and coffee. My team was solid, smart people who actually seemed to want to collaborate instead of hoarding information. The work was challenging in a good way, a puzzle to solve instead of fire to constantly put out. I was still learning names, still figuring out who held real influence and who just liked to hear themselves talk in meetings. But it felt promising. I would have been content to let the whole saga with Tiffany fade into a strange memory. She had other plans. The Monday after we saw each other at the coffee shop, my phone buzzed at 11 at night. "Still thinking about what you said," Tiffany wrote. "You are right. I messed up. Can we please talk?" I stared at the message, then put my phone face down on the nightstand without responding. On Tuesday, Another message came. I know I hurt you. I was wrong. I miss you. I miss us. Again, I said nothing. On Wednesday, you are really going to ignore me? That is mature. The irony of her suddenly wanting to have a conversation about maturity did not escape me. I still did not respond. On Thursday, she switched strategies. I saw 3 missed calls from a new number and 1 voicemail. Curiosity got the better of me, and I put the phone in my ear. Hey, Tiffany's voice said. I am at the restaurant where we had our first date. I thought maybe you would want to come by, for old time's sake. I am at the table in the corner. I will be here for a while. There was a pause, and then the message ended. I deleted it. The idea that she would sit there, in a place where we had once been happy, expecting me to show up because she had decided we needed closure, felt almost theatrical. That Friday, my new team had a happy hour after work at a bar a short walk from the office. It was one of those polished places with dim lighting, high-top tables, and loud music that made everyone lean in closer. I was still in that phase of new job where you want to be social without oversharing, so I went. We were an hour in, laughing about someone's story of a disastrous client call, when I felt the hairs on the back of my neck rise. I looked up and saw Tiffany walking in with 2 girlfriends. For a second, I wondered if it was a coincidence. The way her eyes locked onto mine, the instant she stepped inside answered that. She made a beeline for our table, past the host stand, past the bar. Hey, she said brightly, as if we had run into each other at the grocery store by chance. What a surprise. My coworkers looked between us, curious. Hey, I said flatly. You did not tell me you would be here, Tiffany said, her voice pitched halfway between teasing and accusing, like we were still together. Why would I? I asked. A couple of my colleagues shifted in their seats. She laughed awkwardly. Right, of course. I just thought. I did not know. She glanced around the table. Are you not going to introduce me? She asked. This is my ex-girlfriend, Tiffany, I said calmly. We broke up. She is just leaving. The table went silent. Tiffany's face went white, then red. You are being ridiculous, she hissed. Can we talk outside? No, I said. We are at my work event. You should go. Fine, she snapped. Be childish. She spun around and stalked back toward her friends. After she was out of earshot, Damon, a guy from the marketing team, raised his eyebrows. Well, he said, that was awkward. I took a sip of my drink. Long story, I said. She dumped you and now she wants you back. He guessed, half joking. I looked at him. Pretty much, I said. He nodded. Classic. My ex did the same thing when I got promoted. Some people only want you when you're useful to them. The next morning, I woke up to 23 text messages, all from Tiffany, all sent between midnight and 3 in the morning. I scrolled through them, my thumb moving faster as the tone swung from wounded to furious, to pleading and back again. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. I was trying to be nice, and you humiliated me. You have changed. The old you would never be this mean. I'm starting to think you never really loved me. My friends think you're being abusive. Withholding closure is emotional abuse. Fine. I hope you are happy alone. You will regret this. I blocked the number without responding. On Sunday, Michelle texted me. Hey, she wrote. I know things are weird. I just wanted to say my sister is going through a lot right now. She really did care about you. Maybe give her another chance to explain. I sat on my couch, the television on mute, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Finally, I replied. She had 18 months to care about me. When I needed support, she called me an unemployed loser and walked away. I am not interested in hearing an explanation now. Tell her to move on. I have. Michelle wrote back. I understand. I will tell her. I believe she meant it. I also knew Tiffany would not listen. Monday morning, I got an email from Human Resources asking me to stop by. For a moment, a cold fear gripped me that I had somehow managed to get fired from my new job before my second month was over. When I walked into Ms. Daniels' office, she looked uneasy. Rashad, she said, gesturing to a chair. We received a complaint about you. My heart sank. What kind of complaint? I asked. A woman called, claiming to be your ex-girlfriend, Ms. Daniels said. She said you've been harassing her, sending unwanted messages, showing up places she is, and making her feel unsafe. I stared at her, then actually laughed, a short, humorless sound. That is literally the opposite of what has been happening, I said. Can you elaborate? Ms. Daniels asked. I pulled out my phone. I never initiate contact, I said. I have asked her repeatedly to leave me alone. She has shown up at my home, at my work events, and at places I go for lunch. She has called me from multiple numbers after I blocked the previous ones. I showed Ms. Daniels the long string of messages, the missed calls, the voicemail about the restaurant, the late-night texts after the bar. I explained the coffee shop encounter, the way she had appeared at my team's happy hour, and the fact that I had blocked her afterward. Ms. Daniels scrolled through in silence, her brow furrowing deeper with each screenshot. "This is clearly not harassment on your part," she said finally. "I will document this, close the complaint, and note that any further contact from her will be treated as harassment toward you. Can I get that in writing?" I asked, just to protect myself. "Of course," she said. "That is smart." I walked out of the office feeling shaken, not because I was in trouble, but because Tiffany had tried to follow me into this new part of my life and poison it. That evening, I stopped by a takeout spot near my apartment to grab dinner. As I waited at the counter, I heard someone say my name. I turned and saw Angela, Tiffany's mother. I had not seen her since a family barbecue months before the breakup. She looked nervous but determined, the way a person looks before delivering a rehearsed speech. "Hi, Rashad," she said. "My daughter mentioned you two ran into each other recently." "We did," I said carefully. "She is pretty upset," Angela continued. "She says you have been cruel." I met her gaze. "She dumped me over the phone in a parking garage right after I lost my job," I said. "She called me an unemployed loser and told me she could not waste more time on someone who might not work out. Now that I am doing better than before, she wants back in. That is not something I can just overlook." Angela winced. "She handled things badly," she said. "But she is my daughter. She made a mistake. She was scared. Her father left us with nothing. Money has always been a sensitive subject. She panicked. Then she should date a bank account, not a person," I said. "That is harsh," Angela said quietly. "So, was calling me a loser when I was already having the worst day of my career?" I replied. My order number was called. I stepped away to grab the bag from the counter. "I hope she gets the help she needs," I said as I passed Angela on the way out. "But I'm not going to be part of it." I went home, poured a drink, and sat on my couch, the quiet of my apartment pressing around me in a way that felt more like peace than loneliness. Halfway through my drink, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I got a new number. The text read, "Please do not block this one. I just need to talk to you." I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed, "I'm going to say this once. We are done. Permanently. You ended things when I needed support. You are only back because I do not need support anymore. That is not love. That is opportunism. Stop contacting me. Stop showing up where I am. Stop calling my job. Move on with your life." I hit send and then blocked the number. The weight that lifted from my shoulders was small, but noticeable, like setting down a bag you had forgotten you were carrying. I had hoped that would be the end of it. It was not. Within a week, I started noticing Tiffany's car in the parking lot of my apartment complex. The first time, I saw it as I pulled in after work. She was sitting in the driver's seat, staring straight ahead, pretending to scroll her phone. I parked on the far side of the lot and went inside without acknowledging her. The second time, I came out in the morning to head to work and saw her car 2 rows over, idling. I took a picture with a time and date stamp. The third time, I called the non-emergency police line. An officer came out, took my statement, and walked over to her car. I watched from my window as they spoke. When he came back, he said, "She says she is just parked in a public lot visiting a friend in the building. There is not much we can do unless she approaches you or threatens you. But we have documented it. Call us again if she keeps showing up." She left that evening. 2 days later, her car was back. Around the same time, she started appearing at the sandwich shop I went to near my office. The first time, I saw her through the window as I approached and turned around to go somewhere else. The second time, she was already inside when I walked in, standing in line like she had been waiting for me. She stepped directly in front of me. "Please stop running away from me," she said. "I'm not running," I said. "I just do not want to talk to you." "We need closure," Tiffany insisted. "You got closure," I said. "I told you we are done." "That is not closure," she said. "That is you being vindictive." I ordered my food and moved to a table in the corner. She followed, sitting down across from me uninvited. "5 minutes," she said. "That is all I am asking." "No," I replied. "I have been very clear. Showing up where I am and refusing to leave is not romantic. It is harassment. It is called fighting for someone you love," she said. I picked up my food and left, eating lunch in my car. The worst incident before the court hearing happened during poker night. I have a long-standing friend group from college: Jerome, Lamar, and Trey. Once a month, we meet up to play cards, talk trash, and catch up on each other's lives. We rotate apartments, and that month, it was my turn to host. Reggie, another friend who had gone to law school with Lamar, joined us that night too. We were halfway through a pile of chips in the middle of my coffee table, when there was a sharp knock at my door. I glanced at the time, a little after 9. I was not expecting anyone else. I checked the peephole and felt my shoulders tighten. Tiffany stood in the hallway, holding a bottle of wine. "Is that your ex?" Jerome whispered from the couch when he saw my expression. I nodded. "I know you are in there. I can hear you," Tiffany called through the door. The room fell silent. I opened the door just enough for the chain to hold. "You need to leave," I said. She pouted. "Come on, Rashad. Do not be like this in front of your friends." I brought wine. "We can all hang out like adults." "You are not invited," I said. "You do not live here. Leave." "We used to talk about me hosting poker nights with you," she said, trying to peer past me into the apartment. "I just wanted to—" "We broke up," I cut in. "You ended it. You do not get to show up at my place months later and act like we are friends." Reggie came up behind me, his presence solid. "He asked you to leave," Reggie said calmly. "You should probably go." Tiffany looked past me and saw the guys watching from the couch. Embarrassment flashed across her face. "Fine," she snapped. "This is why we did not work. You never wanted to include me in anything." I stared at her. "You dumped me because I got laid off," I said, my voice level. "You called me an unemployed loser and told me I was not enough for the life you wanted. You do not get to rewrite that now." The hallway went quiet. "Is that really what happened?" Lamar asked from the living room. "Yes," I said without turning around. Tiffany's mouth tightened. "We are not done talking about this," she said. "Yes, we are," I replied, and shut the door. There was a beat of silence, then the sound of her footsteps moving away. After she left, the poker game derailed into an hour of my friends asking questions and shaking their heads. "She really left you because of a layoff?" Trey said. "And now she's just popping up." "She's been showing up everywhere," I said. I told them about the coffee shop, the bar, the restaurant, the texts, the calls. Reggie listened carefully, his lawyer brain clearly turning. "You need to document everything," he said. "Keep screenshots, save voicemails, write down dates, and times you see her car in your parking lot. Do not engage more than you have to. If this continues, you should file for a protection order." This is the kind of pattern judges take seriously. I did not like the idea of involving the courts in my personal life, but the longer this went on, the less unreasonable it sounded. 2 days later, Tiffany escalated again. She showed up at my workplace. Our building had a security desk in the lobby with a visitor sign-in process. I was at my desk going through a report when my office phone rang. "Rashad," the receptionist said, "you have a visitor in the lobby. She says she is your girlfriend." My jaw clenched. "Ex-girlfriend," I corrected. "We broke up months ago. I do not want to see her." "Understood," the receptionist said. "I will let her know." 5 minutes later, my cell phone buzzed with a message from yet another new number. "Really?" Tiffany wrote. "You had security turn me away? I just wanted to bring you lunch and congratulate you on the new job properly." I forwarded the message to Ms. Daniels from Human Resources with a short note. "This is the same person who filed the false harassment complaint." Ms. Daniels called me about 20 minutes later. "This is escalating," she said, her voice firm. "I'm going to send a formal letter to her stating that she is not permitted on company property and that any further attempts to contact you here will be considered harassment. If she ignores that, we will involve building security and, if necessary, law enforcement." "Thank you," I said. "Also," she added, "I would strongly recommend you consider legal action. What she is doing is not healthy, and it is crossing lines." That evening, I looked up attorneys who handle protection orders and scheduled a consultation for the next day. The law office was in a small building not far from downtown, with quiet hallways and framed certificates on the walls. Attorney Collins was in her 40s, with a calm, steady presence that made it easier to talk about things I would have preferred to keep private. I laid everything out on her desk: the texts, the screenshots of missed calls, the photos of Tiffany's car in my parking lot with timestamps, copies of the email from Human Resources about the false complaint, and the letter banning her from company property. "You have enough for a temporary protection order," she said after reviewing everything. "The behavior is clearly unwanted and escalating. A judge will likely grant it." "What does that mean for her?" I asked. "She will be legally required to stay away from you, your home, and your workplace," Attorney Collins said. "No contact, no calls, texts, emails, or social media messages. If she violates the order, she can be arrested." I leaned back in the chair. "I did not want to ruin her life," I said. "You are not ruining her life," Collins replied. "She is making choices. You are responding to those choices by protecting yourself. That is all this is." I thought about the nights I had spent staring at my phone, wondering what fresh message would appear next. I thought about her showing up at my job, at my home, at my usual lunch spot. "All right," I said. "Let us do it." We filed the paperwork that afternoon. A court date was set for the following week. As I walked out of the building, my phone buzzed with a message from Angela. "A protection order," she wrote. "Are you serious? My daughter made a mistake, and you are treating her like a criminal." I did not respond, but the words that came to mind were simple. "Your daughter dumped me at my lowest and is now harassing me at my highest. That is not a mistake. That is a pattern." The morning of the hearing, I woke up early even though it was not until 9. I put on a navy suit, the same one I had worn at job interviews, and checked my folder of documentation for the 10th time. Every text, every call log, every photo was printed and organized. Reggie met me in the courthouse lobby. "You good?" he asked, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "Nervous," I admitted, "but ready." We sat on a wooden bench outside the courtroom until the clerk called my name. Inside, the room was smaller than I expected, with rows of benches and a single table at the front. A judge in her 50s, with reading glasses perched on her nose and an expression that suggested she had seen everything twice, presided. Tiffany was already seated on the opposite side with Angela and a man in a suit that did not quite fit, her lawyer. "Case of King versus Brooks," the clerk announced. We all stood. The judge nodded for us to sit. Tiffany's lawyer went first. "Your Honor," he began, "this is a case of miscommunication between two people who recently ended a romantic relationship. My client has been attempting to reconcile and has been mischaracterized as a harasser. She simply wants closure and the opportunity to repair what was damaged." The judge's expression did not change. "Thank you, counsel," she said. "Mr. King, your response?" I stood, feeling my heartbeat in my throat, but noticing, with some surprise, that my hands were steady. "Your Honor," I said, "I have asked Ms. Brooks repeatedly to stop contacting me. She ended our relationship after I lost my job, using language that was hurtful and final. Since then, she has shown up at my home multiple times, at my workplace, and at places I go regularly. She has created multiple phone numbers to reach me after I blocked her previous ones. She filed a false harassment complaint with my employer. I have not initiated contact with her once since the breakup. I have made it clear that I do not want any further contact. She has refused to respect that boundary." The judge nodded. "Do you have documentation?" she asked. "Yes, Your Honor," I said, and handed the folder to the bailiff, who passed it up. The judge spent several minutes flipping through the pages. With each turn, her forehead creased a little more. "Ms. Brooks," she said finally, looking over her glasses, "you contacted him how many times after he asked you to stop?" Tiffany stood. "We were together for 18 months, she said, her voice trembling. "You do not just throw that away. I made a mistake when I broke up with him, and I have been trying to fix it. I went to his workplace one time to bring him lunch and support him." After he blocked her number multiple times, the judge asked. Tiffany hesitated. "Yes," she said, "but only because he would not talk to me. I needed closure. Closure does not require repeated contact in the face of clear refusals," the judge said. She turned to the lawyer. "Counsel, unless you have evidence that Mr. King invited or welcomed this contact, your client's behavior fits the legal definition of harassment." The lawyer shuffled his papers, clearly floundering. "We have no such evidence, Your Honor," he said quietly. "Then I am granting the temporary protection order," the judge said. "Ms. Brooks, you are to have no contact with Mr. King. That means no phone calls, no text messages, no emails, no social media messages, and no sending messages through friends or family. You are not to go within 500 feet of his residence or his workplace. This order goes into effect immediately and will remain in effect for 1 year, at which point it can be reviewed. Do you understand? Tiffany's face crumpled. This is insane, she said. I love him. That is not relevant here, the judge replied. We are not here to evaluate your feelings. We are here because you have repeatedly ignored his clearly stated boundaries. That behavior must stop. She turned to me. Mr. King, are you seeking this order to punish her? No, Your Honor, I said. I'm seeking it because I have tried everything else, and she will not stop contacting me. The judge nodded. The order stands. After the hearing, we stepped into the hallway. Before I could walk away, Angela moved toward me. Reggie instinctively positioned himself between us. You got what you wanted, Angela said, her voice tight. I hope you're happy. I looked at her. What I wanted was to be left alone, I said. That is it. She loved you, Angela said. She loved the idea of me when I was successful, I replied. When I lost my job, she called me an unemployed loser and ended things without a second thought. When I got a better job and my life improved, she decided she wanted back in. That is not love. Angela opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, then closed it. She had no answer for that. Reggie and I walked out of the courthouse into bright daylight. You good? He asked again. I took a deep breath that felt like it reached all the way down into my feet. Yeah, I said. For the first time in a while, I actually am. The next day was quiet in a way I had almost forgotten was possible. No texts, no calls, no surprise appearances in parking lots. I went to work, had a normal day, ate lunch at my desk, and walked out of the building at the end of the day without scanning the street for a car. I drove home, parked in my spot, and smiled at the thought that there was now a legal barrier between my peace and her chaos. I ordered pizza, watched a movie, and responded to a message from someone new. Ariana, a woman I had met through a mutual friend at a small gathering the week before. We had exchanged numbers almost casually, but the conversation had been easy, full of jokes about bad reality television and shared love of old jazz records. She had texted me earlier in the week, asking if I wanted to grab coffee. I had told her I had a court thing, but would get back to her afterward. So I typed, court thing is done. Coffee's still on the table. Ariana replied almost immediately. Definitely, she wrote. Saturday. There's a cafe in Midtown I love. They have these ridiculous cinnamon rolls. Say no more. I wrote back. On Saturday, we met at a corner table by the window. She was a graphic designer with her own freelance business, laptop stickers and all. She had a quick, bright laugh and a way of tilting her head when she listened that made you feel like your words actually mattered. We talked for 3 hours. Not once did she ask what I made or what kind of car I drove. She knew my job title in a vague way because our friend had mentioned it, but she was more interested in what kind of stories I like to read, what cities I wanted to visit someday, and why I preferred physical books to e-readers. At one point, while we were comparing notes on childhood cartoons, she mentioned a project she was working on and rolled her eyes. Clients always tell me they want something clean but edgy, and then send me the ugliest reference images I have ever seen, she said. I laughed, almost spitting my coffee. That is exactly how people describe projects to me, I said. They say they want innovation, but send last year's proposals with a few words changed. She smiled. It sounds like we both work in translation, she said, turning nonsense into something that makes sense. I liked the way she said, we, as if we were already a team for that small moment. When the sun started to dip and the cafe staff began stacking chairs, we realized how much time had passed. Dinner next weekend? I asked. I would like that, she said, gathering her things. And next time, I am insisting we split the bill. Fair warning. As I drove home in the Tesla, the sky streaked with orange and pink, the playlist on low, I thought about how different it felt to sit across from someone who seemed interested in me, not in my resume, my bank account, or my potential to fund a certain lifestyle. The contrast with Tiffany was sharp, but surprisingly not bitter. It was more like looking at an old photograph of yourself and realizing how much you had changed. When I pulled into my parking spot, the emptiness of the space where Tiffany's car used to linger felt like a blessing instead of a question mark. A few nights later, as I was cleaning up the kitchen, my phone buzzed with a number I did not recognize. For a second, I considered ignoring it, then swiped to open the message. I hope you know you ruined everything we could have had, it read. The sender ID told me everything I needed to know. She had borrowed a friend's phone. I stared at the words, then deleted the message without replying. If I had responded, I might have said, "You ruined at the moment you called me an unemployed loser. I just refused to let you ruin it again when it became convenient for you." But I did not type any of that. Silence was the strongest answer I had. Work continued to go well. In my first month review, my new boss told me I was exceeding expectations and that if I kept performing at that level, there was potential for a promotion to a vice president position within a year. I walked out of that meeting with a quiet, steady satisfaction that had nothing to do with proving anything to anyone else. My savings account grew. My investments, the ones Leon had helped me choose, began their slow, steady climb. My apartment started to feel more like an intentional space than a place to crash between work and obligations. I bought a new television I'd been eyeing, hung a couple of art prints I'd been saving, and actually organized my closet in a way that made sense. Every once in a while, my mind drifted back to that day in the parking garage, when I sat in my car with a cardboard box of my office belongings and listened to Tiffany tell me I was an unemployed loser, like my value had disappeared the moment my job did. Back then, her words had cut deep because a part of me had believed them, or at least feared they might be true. Now, with distance and perspective, they felt almost absurd. I had never been the job. I was a person with skills, experience, and resilience cultivated over years. The job had been the place I brought those things for a paycheck, nothing more. It was obvious now that she had only ever seen the paycheck. That realization did not make me feel triumphant. It just made things clear. Tiffany had thought she was trading up when she walked away from me on that phone call, choosing what she believed was security over what felt to her like risk. She did not realize that in doing so, she was trading away her last chance with someone who actually cared about her as a whole person. The Tesla was nice. The new salary was better than anything I had made before. The clean credit report, the growing savings, the potential promotion, those were all satisfying in their own right. But the real win was quieter, knowing my worth was not tied to my employment status, my title, or my bank balance. My life now had a steady rhythm. Work, gym, occasional dinners with friends, Saturdays where Ariana and I wandered through bookstores or farmers markets talking about nothing and everything. Sometimes when I pulled into my apartment complex, I would remember the days when I checked every car in the lot for a license plate and feel grateful all over again for the protection order nestled quietly in a file at the courthouse. The law was not revenge. It was simply a boundary with teeth. Tiffany had thought other people were disposable based on their income. She had learned, the hard way, that her access to my life was disposable too. I did not feel guilty about the court order. I had given her multiple chances to respect my boundaries. I had told her clearly, in writing, that we were done and that she needed to stop contacting me. She chose not to listen. Actions have consequences. That was true when she walked away from me on the day I was laid off. And it was just as true when a judge told her she had to stay 500 feet away from my front door. People like to say some stories do not have satisfying endings, that life is messy and unresolved. Maybe that is usually true. In this case, though, my story with Tiffany ended exactly the way it needed to, with me living a life that finally felt like mine, and her on the outside, legally and permanently looking in. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.